Hello, and welcome to the South Coast Artists Index, where artists, performers, and writers, as well as curators, directors, and supporters, anyone with ties to the creative community, drops by to introduce themselves to you. We'll talk about their beginnings, their vision, their passion, and so much more. The South Coast Artists Index podcast is brought to you in part by Heavenly Spirits, who invites you to celebrate the art of life and creative communities everywhere.
Hi, this is Ron Fortier with our third installment of live stream podcasting from Play Arcade in cooperation with AHA. The theme for August is Summer in the Seaport. And oddly enough, and this is a shout out to my friends who hopefully are safely back in Miami, they were supposed to come and visit, but unfortunately we had my mom's death. And they had made other arrangements in the meantime, and they showed up a couple of days ago, and I was doing a virtual tour guide thing
of New Bedford.
Of New Bedford.
Oh, that's cool.
It was their first time here, and they were really enthralled by what they saw. So much so that they've already decided they're coming back.
Oh, that's awesome. So
the whole concept of being in this area, it's amazing how much what we have to offer. You really never know what you've got until you start going through in your own closet.
Oh yeah,
right?
Definitely. And when you explore other places and then come back and
right.
see what we have right here.
And it was like, but wait, there's more.
You can go on. I know.
So Summer in the Seaport is an apt segue for their visit. And tell us what the Co-Creative Center is doing, because, my gosh, you have so much going on all the time.
Yes, we do.
It's like, I'm going to go see that show, and it's like, I missed it. There's another one, right?
I know. There's such a need for artists to exhibit their work and do different projects. So we try to balance it out where we have enough time for the artists to exhibit their work, but we also can open our gallery up to as many artists and projects as possible. So it's a fine line, because you want to have enough time for the public to come and see it and do enough programming around it, but also when a show extends into 2 months, which we have done before, we can showcase more art if we can kind of at least do something every 3 to 4 weeks. Yeah.
I think while I was away, Jeff or some of our crew were there.
Oh yeah.
For Could Not Have Done It Without You.
Yes, that was a great collaborative project by Phil Mellon, which he's been working on for about 2 years. So he created, I think there were 12 artists in the collaboration, and with voice, poetry, and then collages and music. So it was really a cool piece. And at the end, he had a vinyl that you can still buy in the collages. So really, really cool. Phil is a great person to work with.
The weird thing is his whole thing was stymied by we have a guest arriving. His whole thing was stymied by COVID, and here I am.
I know.
It was totally unexpected. I mean, I was so much of a COVID version, I didn't even think I would ever get COVID. Yeah. It was quite the shock. One of our guests has arrived, Jessica Bregoli from the Seaport Walk, and other things. And she's also a fine connoisseur of art, because she has one of my pieces in her home.
I do.
She does. But Summer in the Seaport. We were talking with Dena about the Co-Creative Center's whirlwind schedule, which is almost every single month. It's not just for the summer.
Yeah, every month. In the winter, like the dead of winter,
yep.
January and February, we're actually doing a show with Civi, who he builds his own bikes and runs the Star Chaser. So he's going to do like an installation of his bike object sculpture. So that will be 2 months, because it's such a big project.
Well, that's a great theme.
Yeah.
The dead of winter.
Yeah, no, that is. Summer in the Seaport, dead of winter.
Yeah, you could mix that up with a whole bunch of other real interesting imagery, that's for sure. And so give us a quick rundown of the summer, and then we'll go over to Jessica and talk to us about the Seaport Walk, because I think in some ways the Seaport Walk is still a mystery to some people. They drive by and see things on the road, but they haven't been able to connect it to something bigger than
Yeah.
Right.
Well, we have a new exhibition up that is opening tonight. It's Luke Bateman, and it's a geometric painting, abstract painting exhibition. And it's a great show. And so that opens tonight, that runs through August. We also have a lot of different classes, events. We have digital drawing classes every Saturday with Go Sketchy, who's an illustrator, one of our members. So that's for
Sketchy Goichi with Roger Andrews.
Yep. And so that's for kids and teens. Let's see, we have different rides with the Star Chasers. We have different music events happening probably every other week, and writing courses. And there's a whole bunch of different classes we have. We have zine making on the 15th, and then another poetry class that's called Co-Creative Sessions with another artist, and that's August 22nd. So we have programming like 4 out of 7 evenings every week.
Wow.
And so kind of just check in on our calendar, but our main event is the gallery for August with Luke Bateman. His has 4 really large-scale pieces that are in total 8 feet by 8 feet, so it's a very vibrant, bright, cool summer show.
They look more like installation.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So it's definitely a must-see in person too. Like it does a little bit of like eye trickery and like vibration in person. So
good.
Very cool paintings, and yeah, we're just kind of hanging out and come stop by the gallery.
So I want to put you on a spot.
Yeah.
It's time to expand Co-Creative Center.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Not your agenda. You need more space.
Yeah, we do need more space. We have been, it's in the works. We're scoping out different spots in New Bedford, in the North End, in downtown, and also possibly other local cities. So yeah, we're looking to expand in the next year or two.
I mean, from my friends from the University of Miami, Steve and Lourdes Fuller, who were down visiting, they were impressed. And don't forget, they've got the Wynwood section of Miami.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So they were, I mean, the vibe is...
I know. It's a really nice energy in New Bedford and North End, South End, downtown. And I've been scoping out other cities, small scale cities in the area, and there's nothing like New Bedford. You just can't replace it, or the energy here and the artists and the vibrancy of what's happening.
I asked them to forgive me for gushing about it so damn. And there's one more thing. And there's one more thing. Jessica, tell us about a little bit about yourself, your background, and how the Seaport Walk came into being, and where it is and where it's going.
Well, thank you for having me here. I'm a little nervous.
Oh, what for? It's a conversation. That's all it is. Yeah.
It's definitely different. I've never done this before.
While you're talking, I'm going to have another slice of pizza because I'm starving.
Well, I graduated with my BFA in sculpture at UMass. And the creation of the Seaport Art Walk was like a few different things that happened all at the same time that just kind of like clicked, and then it just happened. When I was in college, a lot of people would be like, oh, hey, will you do this for free? It looked great on your resume. And I'm like, I went to school older. I was a single mom at the time. So like I went at it with like a different perspective than a lot of like the kids around me. Like I was like, I want to make money. Like I'm in school for a reason. And when I moved back from Atlanta and I went back to college, I was volunteering my time down at the waterfront in the garden beds with Emily Johns, and I spent my childhood down there with her as well, just volunteering, taking care of the gardens. And that's, where I got a lot of my love of plants was through her, through the waterfront. And, so hence now I'm a landscaper and own a landscaping company.
Did you go to SCAD?
No, I didn't. I got accepted to SCAD, but I didn't go to SCAD.
Savannah College of Art and Design, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So when we were down there and I was already back in school, she was like, oh, wouldn't it be great just to put a bunch of sculptures down here? And then like a light bulb just clicked. And I was like, you know what? This is actually a great spot just to put a bunch of sculptures and murals. And at the time, I was working part-time at C Streak. So I already had like an in with like the management and State Pier. And everybody said, yeah, that's cool. You know, let's do it. And it in the beginning, I couldn't pay anybody, but it was always my intention was to pay people for their time, for their materials, for their talents. So what I could offer was a bunch of Martha's Vineyard Ferry tickets. So,
Oh my gosh.
so like everybody got like 6 round trip tickets. And I think the first show we had like 20 something people in it, and a lot of it was people I was in school with. And so for like the first 2 years, it wasn't called the Seaport Art Walk. It was just whatever random name of a show that I thought of. And then we got a Jerry. She's not in tourism anymore, but she was like, "Oh, we should brand this. We need a good name." So she was the one that came up with the logo. You know, she came up with the name. And it really just took off. And after the second year, it was the second year is when I started getting funding. Because I got more involved with the community and I joined the local cultural council, and I was like, oh, there's such things called grants. I didn't even know about them. So then I started writing grants, and that way I could pay the artists, and it just kept on going and going, and then Margo came into the scene, and I was like, this is just really hard for me. Like, I'm working full time, I own my own business. Like, I don't know if I can keep doing this anymore. And she's like, oh, we'll help you. We'll do all the administration. And I was like, yeah, awesome. I was like, I can still curate it, and it can still be like my vision. Yeah. So it's good. And now I actually do get a small, a stipend for it too. And all the other years before, I got ferry tickets. Yeah.
I moved back from Portugal in 2017, and I remember the first time I met Margo. I think she had just started within a couple of months of my arrival. And I was just absolutely amazed because, having lived in New Bedford and being old enough to, go up against bureaucracy or remember where it's always there's a song and a dance and fill out these forms, and it was so totally different. It was so totally different. So I think probably, and from the little I know, from a pedestrian point of view, Donna Dotson really had to have kicked off, right?
Yes.
It's amazing what boobs can do.
I know.
And we're not talking about Donna's boobs.
No. Seagull Cinderellas.
Seagull Cinderellas.
Yeah.
It is amazing.
But yeah, I mean, like, at the time, our committee had like city officials on it, and like, and professors, and just a whole group of people and volunteers. And, like, none of us even thought about it. Like, none of us even second-guessed it.
We were at art school. We've seen naked people.
Exactly. And it wasn't like she's, rocking, like, double Ds or something like that. So it wasn't, like, in your face. We thought, we read the statement, and we're like, oh, it's like Morella from Anne of Green Gables. So sweet. And did not think anything of it.
She was close.
She totally was.
Yeah, it is bizarre. We have another guest that's arrived. Okay, and it's Rhonda Fazio. It's taken me forever not to say, M. Okay, I'm sorry, because I was going to say it's taken me forever not to say D Fazio, because all I can think is Laverne and Shirley, Haas and Pfeffer Incorporated.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. It's the most. I mean, it's one of those things, crosses you have to bear, right?
Yeah. Well.
Yeah. You're here representing yourself as well as the Coastal Food Shed, or actually kind of both.
No,
at the same
I represent
time?
myself.
Okay.
Yeah. And just things I do in the town. In the town.
Right, and like upstairs on the rooftop, do your cooking. Explain that to us.
It's just a side gig that turned into a good gig, because artists have to have side gigs.
Right.
So I do the Dyer Maker Studio. That's 26th year coming up, and I just opened Interwoven during pre-COVID. And it's a miracle that it's still here. And cooking with Coastal Food Shed, because they needed someone to teach people how to cook. I know how to cook. My Sicilian heritage, all that. And
when you're speaking of grants, I always write little grants for myself for gigs, so I can pay the rent and all that stuff. And one of the grants I wrote was for SNAP benefits, SNAP to the max. So when I'm working with the Coastal Food Shed, I kind of throw in the SNAP benefit of learning how to cook through your SNAP benefit and making more food than what you have. So that's caught on, and I write grants for that. And I'm all over the state with my Dying to Wear It, and that. So yeah, I represent myself, the creative sector of a self is what I'm calling it now.
Creative sector
of self.
Of self.
Just
That's
you just
actually
do
pretty
it. You
good.
just live a creative life, and this is what I'm doing to do it.
That's actually pretty good. I mean, here we have 3 artists,
Yeah.
and
And now I'm starting to teach the gig to other people. It's the art of the gig. It's
yeah.
So
No,
Yeah.
it is. I mean, we're artists 24/7. It's
yes.
not, even though we have
Yes.
side gigs and so on and so forth, it does get to that point. And the whole thing about just the 3 of you is just like one scooch of this incredibly huge creative community. I mean, Jeff and I we've produced over 200. We just dropped Mason Terra today, which was episode 192. But we have a backlog of, and that 192 doesn't include the jazz podcast with Dave Reese, sponsored by Fiber Optics and Neil Weiss. And we've only just scratched the surface. We're really on this move to try to get everybody that we possibly can, because it's so important. And we're not trying to do anything other than make sure that your grandchildren, your great-great-grandchildren, your great-great-great-great-grandchildren someday are going to say, hey, there's Nona Rhoda, Rhonda.
Yeah, you didn't just call me Rhoda.
I said, yeah, I know.
Okay, get it straight, dude.
I know. I get. I've had that.
But to what you're saying,
Yeah.
it is important,
Yeah.
and it's also important to know that
Yeah.
art movements just didn't happen in New York City. It just didn't happen in Paris.
Right.
There's an art movement that's been happening here in New Bedford and the South Coast for a long time. You've had a lot of really great opportunities of education that are here, especially, the Textile Institute, into Swain, into SMU, into UMass. These are all really important connections because the thread has been going on throughout.
Right. Dena and Jessica, what are your thoughts on that? Because that is very valid. I try to explain to people that Fall River, for example, as dynamic as it is, and they've really just come to the fore within the last 2 years, more or less, didn't have the same DNA that we had. They didn't have the Swain. They didn't really have SMU or SMTI SMU. That really has been the catalyst for the longest time.
Yeah, I think it's not only the fact that we had the art school here in downtown, which is like vital. So young people, whoever, it doesn't matter, can walk down the street and get a cup of coffee. Can get culture. There's the art museum. There's a library. It's historically beautiful cobblestones. We're right near the ocean. But I think a lot of it also had to do with the fact that it was so affordable to live around here, and unfortunately, that's not ending up being the case so much. Everything is rising, and there's multiple different reasons for that, which I'm obviously not going to get all political here.
Right.
But I think that was the main thing. Like, if you wanted to be an artist and live in Boston, be like, oh, I can afford a studio in a basement for $2-3 grand, one room. But we're so close to Boston, we're so close to Providence, we're so close to Newport. You can just drive there and bring your artwork, and go to the museums and other cultural institutions. So it's kind of like a really good just hub location-wise. And, I feel like living by the ocean is a beautiful thing for, everybody, just spiritually, intrinsically. It's a location.
Yeah, definitely. And you can get, like you said, you can get to the ocean, you're on the ocean, into the woods, to farms. There's so much access to really anything that you would want to access within 10 minutes. And then to Boston, Cape Cod, New York, Providence, and live a lifestyle that's very laid back. It's not like New Bedford isn't polluted. A very healthy city in terms of like toxicity, and yeah, it's just, I feel like you can live a very healthy, cultured life and be plugged into a small city, but also have the abundance of nature and our natural habitat around us, which is very rare, and there is not any traffic yet.
Well, yeah, and also too, I believe a shout out has to be, said to the current mayor, John Mitchell, and the previous administration with Scott Lang. I mean, they've maintained this momentum. They saw the writing on the wall. It's been a long time coming, and we were all, and I say we because at one point I have to include myself, we were very down on this area because other people led us to believe this was the pit city.
Right.
Yeah.
And yet you go into these other areas, I won't mention them because that's not the point, but you go to these other areas north of us and you go, we're the pit city? Really? Have you guys gotten out of town and checked out our place?
Yeah.
I mean, we've had those issues, and of course now we've got the cloud of gentrification, the possibility of that, but we're aware of it, and I think we'll be able to get through it.
And we're fighting for it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
To stave it off. And one of the things I want to say to all the people that are listening and talking about the mayor and talking about not getting too political, but the gentrification is hovering, and it would be nice if, with all the movements that went on in different cities, like to recognize New Bedford and the South Coast as one of them, is to allow the movement to be what it is to become without that threat of that, $2,000 rents and all that.
Yeah, exactly.
Is to let it be what it is, let it become itself, and then and people can see us.
Well, one of the worst things about getting older, and I am getting older, is remembering silly things like my parents were paying $7 a week for a tenement, like a rabbit run tenement. Or we call them apartments now, but they were tenements. And with a skeleton key that you never use because nobody ever locked their doors. Yeah. So of course, things do evolve. And it was a mill town, and we do touch on Swain. But Rhonda brought up
SMU and UMass.
Yeah, and I just realized now that, don't forget, the reason why that school was built was to educate this working class community, and ups, downs, sideways, and so on and so forth. Here we are. It takes a generation for something this good to happen, and it's taken at least 25 years, 30 years to get to this point. We have another guest, and I had mentioned her before, her arrival, that I remember meeting Margo Saulnier. I had just newly depatriated. I had left Portugal, where I had expatriated to, and it was like, what's this going on? This is all really, really, really new, and I went to go visit her at our office, and I still remember that. And I really do believe that you were and I'm saying this with all graciousness possible, and it's probably not PC, but you were the shot in the ass that the creative community needed. And seriously,
you saved the Seaport Art Walk.
And you've been a friend and a mentor and a guide, and I would go on, but I don't want to embarrass you any further, unless you want me to. No. So with that in mind, could you just introduce yourself to the folks who, horror of horrors, don't know who Margo Saulnier is?
Well, my name is Margo Saulnier, and I'm the Director of Creative Strategies and Arts-Based Initiatives for the New Bedford Economic Development Council, and most people will recognize New Bedford Creative because that's what I manage. So New Bedford Creative began in 2019 when the city created the first strategic arts and culture plan, which is called New Bedford Creative. And ever since then, we've been implementing the plan with a volunteer leadership group called the New Bedford Creative Consortium, which all 3 artists, guest artists tonight, have been or are actively participating on. So I want to thank you all, ladies,
myself
tonight.
included, and I think in two facets.
I hate to say this, Ron, but no, you have not participated on the New Bedford Creative Consortium.
Oh no, the consortium. I'm sorry. I thought a beneficiary of yeah. Okay, red face. Yeah.
So the consortium's the leadership group that helps implement the plan,
Okay.
and they volunteer on 3 different squads and help us with multiple projects and initiatives, and we do some grant programs. And yes, you are the beneficiary of one of those grant programs. We run and or sponsor some training programs for artists. I had a hard time hearing, but I think Rhonda was talking about doing some training programs earlier. So we do that. We took on managing the Seaport Art Walk that Jess founded and is the curator of. So we're really proud of the work that we've done through New Bedford Creative, but by no means it is not me. It is a team effort, and that takes a lot of people coming together and collaborating, and each person who has their own passion and talent and leadership skills contributing to the community, to the creative community, to the creative economy, to the ecosystem here, and it really is a strong community. So that's why I love what I do, because there's so many talented people that are part of this community here. And some of them are coming in right now. And if you walk around tonight on an AHA night, it's just amazing to see the talent that is here in the city of New Bedford.
Yeah, it's as I said before you arrived, we just dropped podcast episode 192 this afternoon. Mason Terra, who's a young painter, and that doesn't include the jazz series podcast that we've dropped as well, and a couple of other things. So well over 200, and we've just scratched the surface. We have no idea how many more episodes are available to us, because it's a wide and deep community, to use an old marketing term. And the beauty of it is, and I do credit you with it, because I mean you are in a position of leadership, and everything comes from the top down. And I know you don't.
Well, I beg to differ.
All right.
I do beg to differ, because I think that the creative community here was built from the bottom up, and the one thing that I have been able to do is provide some resources. So I think that's where I come in, and I try to do that on a daily basis. But this has been building for literally generations, and especially over the past couple decades. And I'm sure you talked about the Star Store.
We know we didn't bring it up.
No, we haven't even gotten there yet. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because all 3 of you are alumna of the Star Store. So I just came from the Star Gallery, where they have a 23-year retrospective of the Star store, and it's just amazing what they've done over the past year. The MFA students there, and I recommend everyone check that out over the next month. Take that opportunity to see the artwork there.
No, I mean the Star Store was well after I left SMU in '75 when I started at SMU. The art program, it wasn't even a college at that point, was still in its infancy. The training that I had was phenomenal, and it led to bigger and better things. And and then to hear of people from Swain and the demise of Swain and the incorporation into SMU. We all have our own stories of pain to relate, especially when something as integral and as vibrant as what became UMass Dartmouth, with the legacy that it had. What are your thoughts on all of this?
I mean,
because I know you can't make things last forever.
That is true. I mean, my own personal story with UMass, which was SMU before that, is, and not many people know I have a music background, but I'm a classical musician and was trained as a classical musician here. I grew up here, and if it wasn't for the youth orchestra, which at the time was called the Southeastern Massachusetts Youth Orchestra, and it was run out of SMU, UMass Dartmouth, I would not have had the success that I had. So, I started in the public schools. I auditioned for and was accepted into the youth orchestra as in like 7th or 8th grade. And then that led to me auditioning for the Greater Boston Youth Symphony Orchestra in high school, was accepted into that. And that led to, me going into a music performance degree at BU and then moving to New York City. So, there are many stories of what the College of Visual and Performing Arts, and it's not just the collegiate degrees, but what people have done through the programs through that school, and we've been talking about keeping the legacy alive, and I do want to say that as far as New Bedford Creative, we've always collaborated with the faculty, staff, and students of UMass Dartmouth CVPA, and it's a very important relationship to us, and will continue to be so. And for the past 3 years, we've collaborated with Professor Laura Henderson and several other professors who teach the foundations course, and they use New Bedford and the downtown New Bedford for their foundations course and the city's utility boxes, and the students design based on the history and the themes of the history of New Bedford. And all of them do this, and it's a competition, and finalists are selected, and the New Bedford Creative Consortium pick 2 winners each year, and those students paint their designs on our utility boxes. So if you come downtown and you see these painted utility boxes, those are CVPA first year students. So they're very talented.
I never knew I thought there was some sort of organized concept or something behind those boxes, but I never knew that it was through.
Yes.
I mean, you live and learn every day.
Yeah.
And
so that's one thing that we do. So after, the Star Store went away, we've been bringing the students into downtown New Bedford. So on one AHA night each semester, we will bus students from Dartmouth to New Bedford, and they'll do a tour of the area, meet some alumni, and then get an introduction to the artists and what New Bedford means, what the artistic legacy of New Bedford means for the College of Visual and Performing Arts. So that's just one thing that we're doing. We have some other plans in the works, but it's an important relationship.
no, I just learned a whole bunch of new things about you. You were. I believe you were involved with either the BSO or was it the Pops?
It was.
It was
both.
Both. Okay. But I never knew you were a musician, and that brought to mind, especially with SMU, the youth orchestra. I remember that, but I can't remember. Were the Colberts involved with that? The Jacqueline and Joseph Colbert at that time, or was it Vincent Ludi? Those are the only. I worked for the Colberts, and Ludi's the only other music instructor that I can remember.
I remember Moody. I had a class under him. It was like a jazz why can't I say appreciation class. I remember him.
Yeah.
I
Well,
think he played
that
with,
was a
Thelonious
very
Monk.
long time ago.
Yes.
So I do not remember.
Well, when I tell people that there was also there was an opera program. You said non. There was an opera program there. That was connected to the Metropolitan Opera in New York. And I got to work for Boris Goldovsky, who was then referred to as the voice of the Met, or the Metropolitan. He was the one that would produce these operas, and it was a learning experience. So in the middle of a scene, he would say, stop. You're probably wondering why Spada Fucili is standing over there. And he would give you a little bit of background. It was wonderful. He was a wonderful man to work with. So the depth and breadth, again, of that legacy is something more to be explored. I mean, there's, you can't just rely to be on memory, because if it's not related, if it's not recorded, all of these things are going to go away. And in conversation, what's so great about it is that now your experiences and your memories and yours, now we can stop putting all this stuff together and painting, to use that term, a better picture.
Mm-hmm.
Margo, didn't you do like a program when you were in Boston and you brought pianos to the streets?
Yeah. So that was after. So yes, I did. So the Celebrity Series of Boston, they were celebrating their 75th anniversary. They're presenting, they're a music organization, presenting organization. They would present all over Boston and Cambridge in different theaters, and so they would present at Symphony Hall and the Wayne Center and at Sanders Theater, and they didn't really have a home venue, and they didn't do many public programs. I mean, they did public programs, but it was more venue-based. So they wanted to do like an outdoor public program. So they said, let's go big and do this street pianos project, which was called Play Me, I'm Yours, which was developed by a London-based artist. And the concept is you put pianos decorated by local artists out on the streets and parks of the city. So we put 75 pianos, 75, on the streets and parks of Cambridge and Boston in 2013, and it was incredible. what was the most incredible thing for me personally was leading up to, it was like a 2-week festival, because guess what? Pianos are not supposed to be outside. They are made of very fine, delicate materials that are not supposed to be outside in the weather. But we had a great piano tech team, and but personally for me, the studio. So we had this unfinished, huge room in. It's in the Seaport district now. It's fancy now. It's the huge building that's near where everyone gets the cruise lines. It's the Innovation Design Center. But this was an unfinished space. It was, they gracefully donated the space to us. And we had a room full of pianos. And there were like 100 pianos in there because we needed more pianos than, yeah. And all of the artists came in to paint, or, you know, if they were using mixed media or whatever they were doing, they would come in and do their work. And some of them would come in every day because it was meticulous work that they were doing, and others would come in and just be like, I'm just doing this one thing and that's it. But that was the most incredible time. And I thought to myself, and I actually said to people, I'm like, if I could do this every day, I would. Because this is amazing.
Well, you know, on Facebook Marketplace, people are giving away pianos all the time.
Yeah. Well, that was, the player pianos was a huge rage, I guess, during the 20s and 30s. Mm-hmm. And Grandma and Grandpa, had them as a lot of them were in houses. They were just a huge knick-knack shelf, and no one played. And now you have so many of these coming out, and people are, the ones that can't be rescued are. They repurpose. They take the keys, and because of the ivory and so on and so forth. But what do you think is the number one reason for this kind of? People want. Let's not talk about culture. People want something to make their lives better than what they are. And regardless of your socioeconomic background, programs like the one that you were involved with just goes to prove that. That's what people want and need. And you're, as we are now, the Artist Index is a nonprofit. I mean, we rely on grants, donations, sponsorships. Mm-hmm. Why are the arts so underfunded? I mean, I don't know what the proper term is. We could have a lot more support, but I guess it's a political thing for lack of a better reason. Okay.
I mean, this is a huge...
We're all sighing and sitting back on this one.
Yeah.
This is a huge topic of...
Can we shut off the mics?
Why do we live in a capitalist society?
Yeah.
I wish that it weren't the case. I mean, I do...
It's gotten a little better, Margo.
I was just going to say that.
And you have a lot to do with that.
I'm more hopeful now than I was
Because let me clarify something. Margo, whenever she's out doing press releases and everything, the mayor likes to call her sorcerer. And she's in my phone as, no, she's not a sorcerer as in magic. She's a sorcerer as in... She finds out the source of funding and gets it out to people that needs it. So, sorcerer, Margo Sorcerer with a S-O-U-R-S-E. Because she's a source. She's a resource. And she's a resource to so many of us. And it's like, you need something? Call Margo. She'll let you know if it's a go or not.
It is all about that networking. It is all about... it's almost like a palette. A little of this color, a little of that, a little smidge here, a little smidge there, and slowly the composition starts coming into focus.
Yeah.
Really bad art analogies, but
They're a bunch of artists.
but really, I mean, especially when, again, my two friends from Miami, and I, Steve Fuller is somebody whose work you all know. His Channel 5 logo has been up there for over 50 years. And he's a very erudite guy, very, he's got an interesting personality. And when he came down here, he was jumping up and down. And again, I mean, he wants art, he can just go to Wynwood. And the place is thriving and teeming with artists and such. But to see it here, and then all the extra added benefits that we have, it really is a perfect recipe for success for the South Coast. And speaking of South Coast, is there still pushback on that term?
South Coast?
Yeah. Somebody asked me about that the other day.
I thought it was called the South Coast. I used to call it Southeastern Massachusetts.
Yeah, for a long time, I think it was Southeastern Massachusetts.
Right.
I think that for those of us who actually like the cities and towns, like so we're also involved in this collaborative, also volunteer effort for Art Week South Coast, which has been the cities and towns along the coast, the South Coast of Massachusetts. And we just had a meeting last week talking about, let's expand, because there are some of the towns above us who have artists and stuff going on, and how do we do that? So I don't think that there's pushback on that at all. There's obvious, there's clearly still political divides. And I don't know if that's what you're referring to, Ron.
It's old time, old school.
That's always gonna. Yeah. I think there's always gonna be an element of that. It's less so for the creative community here because we do cross geographic boundaries quite often. So I don't see it as an issue.
Right.
I mean, it becomes an issue when people come to us for grants, and if you don't live in New Bedford or you're not doing a project in the city of New Bedford,
right,
that is an issue. But I can point you to some other people that offer other grant resources.
So, is there a possibility of an organization that'll be an umbrella organization where what's the word? Consolidated. In other words, they're not the I don't want to say the ruling or the rating body, but they are. It's just this big umbrella that everybody is under and everybody's autonomous. But again, it just makes it. You can find the fruit in the fruit section. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
It does. I mean, we have talked about that. We a few of us here, we did a feasibility study for a business of art center, for lack of a better word. That did come up of doing an umbrella organization or an umbrella. I think that's what you're pointing to.
Yes.
Of having this kind of back-end support system that helps artists and small organizations and small companies that need it. We are having conversations about that. We know it's a need for artists. We know it's a need for small arts, not just arts, but small arts, cultural nonprofits. So it's a continuing conversation.
I mean, similar almost to the travel and tourism boards. The local boards, and it works its way up to regional and then state. That was what I was thinking about. Yeah,
it's a great. If something like that actually did happen, it's a great way to give local artists jobs, good paying jobs. And being able to use their talents. I think it's a great
Well, speaking of
idea.
which, again, when you have somebody over and you become, a virtual tour guide because you're stuck in a house with COVID, trying to go over the history of the city, the whole thing from whaling to textiles. Then we went to the apparel business. Fishing was always there, not there until it became there. Meaning, fishing was so a thread that ran through everything until people realized, hey, this is a huge industry in of itself. And I was privileged to represent them as the agency of record for the New Bedford Seafood Co-op, and I was stunned to see the revenues that were brought into the city because of them. And then thinking of the creative community as, although trying to pinpoint how much money actually comes in, and there was that whole Richard Florida thing, and that survey that was done back in the, late 80s, early 90s, or maybe middle 90s. I don't remember. The point being
I think
is,
it was later than that. Actually.
Was it later than that?
It was like the 2000s.
Was it 2000s?
Yeah.
The point being is, it is an industry. It's not just a bunch of
Ron,
people
we
with
just
purple
came
hair.
out.
Yeah.
We just published a creative economy report. We analyzed the impact of the creative economy and its economic impacts. I forget the whole title of the report, but we commissioned Lori Zapalak, who has a PhD from MIT. She took data from 2018 through 2022, and we wanted to know what the creative economy, what the direct jobs and the direct revenue for both nonprofit and for-profit are in the city of New Bedford. And for direct jobs, it's over 3,300 direct jobs in 2022. And for direct revenue, it's over 300 million in direct revenue. And for 2022, that 3,300 jobs is about 7% of the workforce in New Bedford. So that is a significant percentage, and that's direct. Mm-hmm. So if we were to commission, which we're not going to do immediately, but we could in the future commission, let's look at direct and indirect. So that's going to be a lot higher than that, right?
And ancillary. I mean, there's the supportive services. And,
right.
Yeah.
Right. So, we published that in May of this year, which, if you want to read the 80-page report, you can download it on our website, newbedfordcreative.org, and is very impactful. Lori took a research methodology. I know this is not sexy to talk about, but it's exciting for me. She took a research methodology that New England Foundation for the Arts used for a couple of their reports on the New England creative economy. But what NEFA did is they used anonymized data, which is anonymous data from census. So you can't really verify that data. What Lori did is she used some data sets that could be verified, and then she and some of us on staff, we went through, spreadsheets after spreadsheets and have this report to show for it. So it is very impactful. The diversity of the creative economy. Rhonda was at the press conference, and Rhonda, I would love for you if you wouldn't mind saying a few words, because you were there. So there's like the culinary arts, but then there's like the hair and body arts. There's the manufacturing, the people who are designing our signs and our devices and how the buttons are designed on our systems, and there's all kinds of interesting things happening here in New Bedford. Even your area is fascinating, what you do.
All the stuff that I do,
Yeah.
all gigs,
All stuff that goes in
all,
pots.
all gigs, just so I can live the life that I want. Yeah.
But it's gone beyond gig economy, right? I
But
mean,
no, it's still there.
It's still
It's
there?
still there, yeah. Musicians, you know.
well, and that's another thing too. Terms are very.
The point is, why can't? So this is the question, with funding and all this stuff that Margo helps us do. Why do we have to fight for getting paid when we're creatives, we're artists, we're this, we're that? It took a long time for us to get paid. People expected us to do our work for nothing.
Wait, we're no different than electricians, plumbers, carpenters.
Right. So to see the importance of the arts and the artist is a beautiful thing, right?
Okay.
Now, with what's been happening since Margo's been at the helm, Miss Sorcerer that she is, Sourcer. I think I spelled it right. The sorcerer.
I can't spell it if I can't see it.
Getting us funds, pointing us in directions.
Right.
Some of us figured out. I figured it out on my own because I was like, oh, these little grants, yeah, I can go for those. Those are great. They add up to a lovely number, and help me. But there's other stuff out there, and this is where Margo comes in and, points us in the right direction and all that. But the point I'm trying to make is we deserve to be paid for our work. Arts and artists. Where do the arts come from without the artist?
Yeah, the old trope of exposure.
and
Is exactly just that.
so to be paid for that, yes. And why it's taken this long is beyond me.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother conversation.
Well, yeah, I mean, even like I said before, like that's how the Seaport Art Walk, one of the catalysts for it was to get artists paid.
Yes.
And at the time, which I don't know if we still are, but at the time we were the only, we had the highest stipend for sculpture and mural art in New England. I don't know if we still are, but we're at, we're at 3,000 or 2,500?
2,500.
Yeah, 2,500, like per piece.
Amazing.
Yeah, right, like thinking it started with me giving away ferry tickets. And doing a raffle and potluck. It's actually really turned into something. And, even when it comes to what the future holds, I have absolutely no idea. I'm surprised it's even got this far. And it's amazing. Every year will be a little bit different. And
I need to talk to you after this about
Okay.
that. Yeah. I have an idea.
nice.
Well, and here's one thing, and I've tossed this out several times on various podcasts. We have the comprehensive high school, and now that we have this vice presidential candidate who's a former school teacher, high school teacher, all of a sudden,
Apparently likes to go to Springsteen shows too.
yes, yeah, he does, yeah.
And old baby pigs.
My
Yes,
vote.
and I thought
So cute.
I thought of you the first time when I heard that. It's like, oh God, I wonder if she's ever bumped into him.
I will.
But it's all of a sudden, and then out of that 300 million they raised in 2 weeks or
Yeah.
more, the number just keeps going up. They said over 50% of those donations are coming from teachers.
Wow.
They've had it with out of pocket, paying for all these things in their classrooms, so on and so forth. And there's also, I remember when I worked for Ray Basalin way back for the New Bedford Public Schools. He was the superintendent of art for the city, and I was there when the art program went from the classroom teacher, the art room, to the itinerant teacher. I used to refer to them as the bag ladies. They had shopping carts, and they had to go
Yep.
from school to school. So the arts always seem to be, get trimmed. And I always used to say the marching band is always going to be okay as long as there's football. But once there's no football, they're going to be out there like the rest of us trying to look for money. So the point is, we have the comprehensive high school, and we have the vocational high school, which is phenomenal. It has grown in leaps and bounds over the years. And we did when I had my advertising agency, we did this survey, and one of the weird windfalls from this survey was we couldn't figure out why there were 22-year-olds with a brand new pickup truck and a new mortgage. And we sourced it back to they were all vocational school graduates. So that, they're coming out of school, they've already made money in their placements, externships, and so on and so forth. And that is wonderful because there are people who, craft skills, trade skills and so on and so forth is super important. But we have this huge gap in the middle.
Well, I mean, if you think about the Voc right now as to what it used to be, it used to be where all the bad kids went because they couldn't go in. And now it's like super prestigious
Same thing with
and
the agricultural
super hard.
school.
Exactly.
Yeah, and Bristol Aggie too.
Yeah.
It's obscene. Like, we need to bring that back. Because,
Bristol Aggie was on the verge of closure.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Sure was.
And you're right. It was considered, okay, well, your son's not all that intelligent, so let's put him over there as a steam fitter or something, a pipe fitter. But the gap in the middle,
we need more vocational schools.
we need a junior and senior high of visual and performing arts. There are so many kids that go through life.
That has been talked about, Ron. I don't know if it's still being talked about. I know that when I went to New Bedford High, there was, I think there still is a really great fine arts program.
I know their music program, their choral, their band, their orchestra, their
the
jazz.
art program was good too. But again, I'm pretty old, so that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, that there has been talk about that. My daughter does go to Vogue. She is in the visual design shop. She is college bound.
Yep.
She's an honors student, and always was. So it is a different.
It's different than how it used to be, for sure.
But you reminded me of something. So the reason I'm optimistic is that here on the city level, and why I came back here is that arts and culture was always being talked about in the form of being a vital component of economic development. Vital component. Not just the icing on the cake, but like a piece of the cake. And statewide in Massachusetts, you're hearing more and more of that kind of creative economy being talked about in that way, where they just passed the highest budget for Mass Cultural Council, over $26 million for Mass Cultural Council. That is real good news for all of us. Last year, the National Endowment for the Arts, or actually it may have been this past year recently, had a national convening in Washington, D.C. Now, I did not go to this convening, but they had it live streamed, and I watched it. And what is exciting to see from the Biden administration at the time, and I hope it carries over to the Harris administration, is integrating the arts into other departments of the government, but also other businesses and industries. And that is what's key, is integrating. And we know that the arts and artists can and do integrate within just about any industry here in the city, but pretty much anywhere. So that's the opportunity. That's why I'm real optimistic of where we're going here locally. I know we're still, some of us are still in tough times, recovering from the pandemic. Some of us are out of that, which is great. But yeah, I'm optimistic.
Yeah, I listen to NPR a lot, and they have that, I forget what they're calling it, but it's like basically a prescription from your doctor to go to the museum, to go for a hike. And if you don't have the funding to go to the museum, that they will get you funding to go to the museum, and it's for your own like emotional, mental well-being, and that it really plays a huge thing. The arts play a huge thing. And it's great to see it being taken seriously by medical professionals.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, in Europe, it's so totally different. And I've probably told each one of you individually, you know, when I was in Portugal, people say, oh, you know, you introduce yourself, and, oh, what do you do? I'm a painter. You're a painter? Have I seen your work? Is it, you know, any work published? Are you in a local gallery? Blah, 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 blah. Here, it's like, oh, yeah, you make any money doing that? And it's a cultural thing. And on the same note, I think it was in NPR, because before you started speaking about that program that you heard, it was either one of the candidates or President Biden himself who interjected that into a speech about getting artists into government jobs because of the way our brains work.
Right.
Yes.
And don't forget, what was it? Daniel Pink and the MFA is the new MBA. That kind of idea, because, and yeah, there's that trope about we're problem solvers, but we're also pattern recognizers and a bunch of other things as well. I mean, it's a skill set that doesn't just belong to us. It's a skill set that can be taught as part of any curriculum and applied to whatever, you know, math, music. So, I mean, you're a musician. Transposing. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's something, you know, and scales. People wonder, why do they do scales? And I'll never forget a friend of mine who lived next door to me, and I could hear him da 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 da, and then he's augmented diminished sevenths, so it's probably gibberish, but he had, and then you could hear the change and such. And I remember during the concert, he had finished the set, and I said, Bill, you broke 2 strings. And he looked at me and he went, oh my God. I transposed without even knowing, all by sound. So he said, God bless Lionel Sousa, my music teacher, because it was like, well, you could hear me like everybody else is playing in the street, and he's da 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 da, right?
Yeah, that
Foundation's everything.
Yeah.
Yep, that repetition works.
Yeah. I've also heard, and let's not let any cats out of any bags, because this is a public forum right now. I've heard murmurs, I'm not going to say rumors, murmurs of people saying that they've heard that there's a group trying to create a higher education certificate, not diploma, art school. And that would be something that would, I'd be very, very curious to see if it could be.
Where were you hearing these murmurs?
I get to talk to a lot of people.
Might have been in his dreams.
Could be. Could have been a COVID fever dream. But you know what? It's really not, whether it's true or not, it's not a half-baked idea. Can it be brought back? But at the same time.
Is that what Swain, is that the Swain model?
Yeah, the Swain model was originally a certificate program. Yeah. And at the exact same time, I say, not because I'm not, you know, my personality. It's my mind is a little bit wider open about things like that. It's like, well, we're barely able to support a commercial gallery. That is a huge missing part for painters, sculptors, fine artists, plastic artists as they call them. That is a huge element, that we have all these artists and yet we have no local representation, and that's something that I would like to see happen at some point in time.
Add it to the list.
Yeah, I know. There's a growing list. So we're going to wrap this up, and I just want each one of you to give your 2 cents, so to speak.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
My 2 cents.
And by the way, I have
You
a
were
bag.
going to say something
I
earlier,
was.
Rhonda.
I was.
I have a bag of produce for you.
Thank
from
you.
my garden.
Thank you.
Right.
What the world that I live in, how my mind works, is I have the advantage of living in an older world and a newer world. I'm right on the cusp of boom and Xer. Okay? And so also backing it up even more, I do very many things pre-industrial. We live in the remnants of an industry, especially in this area. Okay? So when we're talking about all the, the artists and everything, if you think of the creativity that went on prior to the Mighty Machine, okay, everything was done by hand. Mm-hmm. People were stolen from distant lands to create, to continue to create. And when I'm saying this is people, the Ottoman Empire, or, I'm making history very small right now. But people were stolen for their skills and brought elsewhere into different regions. So anyways, the point I'm trying to make is that art in the United States of America is not a valued profession. Movies are, but all that takes skill. All that to put it together takes skill. So when you think of like creativity and artists and what they do, going back, if you want the art, you have to have the artist at the foundation of it, at the root of it. So, government and the people that want the artist to be part of that government, it's like it was that.
Well, and not to belabor the point of my friend's visit from Miami, but they were at the National Park Visitor Center, and he asked a question like, where did they build the whaling ships? He wanted to see if there was a site where they were built. And they told whoever it was, they told him, no one's ever asked us that question.
That's a valid question.
It's a very valid question. I said, well, upriver, the longboats, and they did launch some the hulls from there, and then they got fitted out downriver.
But let's not forget,
but look, the craftsmanship
in
there.
the colonial times, they were taking resources here, bringing them back over to Europe, building and bringing it back.
Right.
So those boats could have been very well made in Ireland or Portugal or wherever.
Well,
the boat builders.
Half the housing stock in
back.
Nantucket was built here in New Bedford and shipped by barge across. But it was a really valid point, because don't forget, you had all these crafts, these skills, artisan skills. And then of course, there was everybody will think of the figurehead on the ships and so on and so forth, but so the art's always been here.
Yeah.
And
so my two cents is to value the artists in your community, value and see them as talented individuals that live amongst the community.
We're hoping to do that with the Artist Index, that's for sure.
In a nutshell.
I don't have anything as profound to say, except for the Seaport Art Walk will be on display until
it loses funding, but Margo won't let that happen.
No. The pieces will be up. The sculptures will be up until like the end of October, but the murals stay. The ones that are obviously on Jersey barriers and walls, so those aren't going anywhere. And it's free, open to the public, accessible. You can drive by, walk by, whatever.
Are there QR codes?
There's QRs on Jacob Jinga's. I don't think we did QRs this year. That's okay.
We will.
It's okay.
So we've had a delay in getting the signs done, but we're once we get the signs out, there will be QR codes and bringing them back to the websites. So yes, and did you know? Because maybe you don't know.
I don't.
That the Seaport Art Walk has a YouTube video on New Bedford Cable Access right now. You can watch the opening reception. We did an opening night tour on the July AHA night, and it was filmed by New Bedford Cable Access. You can watch it, and you get to see Jess and all of the other artists talk about their pieces. So I highly recommend. I watched it today.
I know. I read your email.
It was
I didn't
great.
click on it yet. I was like, I don't want to see myself.
Right.
And you can see me holding up the speaker for everyone so that people could hear them. But I do recommend that. And
we've got to get both of you, individually scheduled. I believe you already did your guest forms that we need.
Oh yeah, we've never appeared.
What?
Neither of us have ever appeared on the Artist Index.
No.
Because scheduling you is like trying to herd cats.
I'm more available in the wintertime. That's when my workload.
Yeah.
And I've got this crazy idea that I'd love to discuss with you too, that I've had for years and years and years. Like, yeah, you need another crazy idea, right?
I think I know what it is.
No. This one is really very, very different.
Oh, then I'll probably like it.
All right.
And Margo, yes, your final parting words.
My parting words is to visit newbedfordcreative.org and see what resources are available to you on that website. And so if you are an artist and you do live in the area, we do come out with grants each year. We will probably be on a different grant cycle in 2024 than in previous years. So follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube at New Bedford Creative. We also manage Art Week South Coast. So if you're an artist, we're promoting throughout the year. That's an annual festival that happens in May. And, follow us if you want to do a collab on Instagram. Happy to accept that. Art Week South Coast. And newbedfordcreative.org. We have a creative directory. We are about to expand our creative directory. So, in the past, it's been focused mostly on New Bedford, but we're going to do the South Coast and
Nice.
Bristol and Plymouth counties and source from Creative Ground, which is New England Foundation for the Arts, and that we feel will get the word out throughout New England for the artists, more exposure for our visual artists, more exposure, and hopefully get more bookings for our performing artists. And we have a lot more things planned, so please follow us. And just I really want to thank all of our artists, our creatives, our arts and culture nonprofits for your commitment to doing the work that you do in the community for the residents here. It really does make a difference. We live in a magical place, and it's because of all of you. So thank you.
We do.
I actually have one more thing to say.
Yeah.
Since everyone plugged, I wanted to plug the fact that if anyone needs any, anyone wants any guidance for gigs or creating a gig, I did receive a grant the Gig Maker,
Right.
and I'm very happy to help people figure out what they want to do with what they have inside them, and put out a gig that they can make a living from.
Okay.
Those classes are August, September, and October, and they're free.
Okay, excellent. And, this is completes our first year on the 23rd as a legal nonprofit, even though Jeff and I have been doing this for over a decade. Just when we think we've got it figured out, something new comes along. So we're also asking all of you if there's something that you think we could do to help you with your agenda, reach your goals, collaborations or whatever, please let us know. I'm just going to put in this really quick plug. One of the reasons why I started this and brought it up with Jeff, then that's how we met each other and became friends, and it actually changed my life, and I'm not even going to go into it here, but is because of my mother, who just passed away 2 weeks ago. She was a father singer, and I documented her, and I was told she was the first person I wrote an article on, because we were doing articles as well as podcasts when we started. And I was told that she's the only woman of her generation, father singer of her generation, that has been documented.
Wow.
So what we are doing is very important, not just for today, but it's also for the future. But I know there's other things that we can't see ourselves doing because we're too close to what it is that we're doing. Scrambling for sponsorships, scrambling for donations, and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to wrap this up right now. Dena Haden from the Co-Creative Center was one of our guests. Rhonda M. Fazio from Interwoven. And we're working on a project which is hopefully going to take off. Hopefully going to take off. Jessica, we've got a lot of unfinished business to do. I'm so glad that I finally had the chance to meet you, not at a job site.
Right.
Okay, and I want to talk about you as an artist as well as a Seaport Art Walk, because those are two different things. And then Margo, thank you so much. I want to have you on a podcast as Margo musician, and as also as Margo the
cellist,
the director of New Bedford Creative. Is that the correct term? Correct title?
It's
arts
long.
and cultural strategist.
It's
Sorcerer for the for the,
with an OU.
Yeah, with an OU. Yeah.
so it's clarinet.
Oh,
But I
Thought it
love
was a
cello. I love cello. That's why I didn't correct you right away. I'm like, should I
so
get
funny.
that? People think I play cello. That would be great.
Wow, why the clarinet?
Oh, that's a
Just,
long story. For the podcast.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And with in mind, thank you, folks. Thanks for joining us. Next month is the 25th anniversary of AHA.
It
Or my
is.
show. Yes.
The 25th
The
anniversary.
25th anniversary. I remember when I came back into the area, and the first I was like, I was like shocked, because I at one time worked at Freestones when we were the only light on in the neighborhood at night, and I was stunned that I could not find a parking space. So with that in mind, thank you all for being who you are and for doing what you do. And with that in mind, bye-bye.
We'll see you next week for another episode of the South Coast Artist Index podcast. To learn more about the South Coast Artist Index, visit theartistindex.com. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.